Hey hooligans, this is Sam. I had to remove most of this 18-minute response to Stefan Molyneux' free speech video from an upcoming video that I'm working on about free speech. And since I had to remove most of it from my video, I wanted to make it available to you guys separately in case you were interested in seeing all of the rest of my responses to Molyneux. So here it is. Enjoy.
So we saw some data on what those crazy college robots think about free speech. Do we have some historical data on Americans as a whole?
We turn to the comprehensive data made available through the General Social Survey.
Oh, thanks, Stefan Molyneux. Stefan Molyneux. Wikipedia says he's a conservative, so let's see what he says.
This is the data from 1972 all the way through to 2016. In general, there's some positive trends here. You can see all of these lines are all on the upward trends of, yes, we should allow them to speak. What has actually declined, the only one that has declined, is racism. Racism is a thought crime, and it is a wrong and base position, but nonetheless, it is not something that has directly caused the deaths of hundreds of millions of people, which if you stack communism and militarism together, you get to. So,
have you never heard of lynching?
Hey nigger, we're all gonna hang you now.
I'd say that's pretty fucking direct. So I don't see how you're making this distinction that racism is thought crime, but political ideologies like communism and militarism are crime? But I'm sorry, we're not really here to talk about you giving racism a pass over communism. Go on.
So this is the question that was actually asked in the survey. Now, I should like to ask you, suppose this admitted communist wanted to make a speech in your community. Should he be allowed to speak or not?
Oh, good. So public support of a communist's free speech has improved markedly since '72, regardless of party.
There's no Republican here. One of the big problems that's occurring at the moment, Republicans are having a good deal of trouble trying to speak on increasingly radical leftist campuses in America.
Should a conservative be allowed to speak? I think the rest of this data is sufficient to answer that question. Later in the video, you show the same rise in support for militarists who want to do away with elections in favor of permanent martial law.
They want General Mad Dog Mattis to run our public school system? Let's hear him out. Wait. They want lower taxes? Get the fuck out, you capitalist pig!
Look, we found a gender gap. As more and more women have come into college and tolerance for opposing views has decreased, this graph may be an avenue to exploring that.
Or you could notice that men and women's tolerance has improved by more than that gap, and realize that if you wanted to confirm your preconceived notion that colleges have become less tolerant, you need a different graph.
Now, what about whites versus blacks? In general, you can see here that whites are more favorable for the free speech of communists than blacks are.
Yes, it shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why, as we've gradually chipped away at all the harm that white people have done to blacks over the years, like depriving them of free speech in the 60s, or redlining, which is still happening, that they've become more amenable to letting those people talk about how wonderful they think segregation used to be.
Anti-religionists, the homosexual, the militarist, the racist. The Republicans have held relatively steady. Democrats have remained relatively steady. There's been relatively constant results among the whites allowing the racists to speak. Among the blacks, there's been a slight upward trend. To break down the numbers by men versus women, and here we see again more intolerance among women.
Dude, you're looking right at it. There's barely a difference.
If we look at the differences between whites and blacks in America, we can see that there is a significant difference. So this is a big challenge. This is a very, very large difference.
I'd like to point out again that historically, black people have often been denied their First Amendment rights by people who are crowing about free speech, just like you are here. So it's rational for people who have been historically denied this right to not always be wholeheartedly in support of it for all the people who hypocritically denied it to them. The fact that they're more divided on that issue isn't genetic. You already showed their support for free speech has improved a lot, especially their support for the free speech of racists, where white people haven't become any more tolerant.
Democrats versus Republicans. So here we can see there is more tendency for the Republicans to allow for freedom of speech versus the Democrats, with the exception of homosexuality.
Again, they're virtually identical. We liberals are supposed to loathe free speech, remember? We're supposed to be firing mortars and rockets at it, not a 4% difference of opinion.
And we can see that as the demographics of the West changes, free speech begins to decay. It is decaying throughout Western Europe, it is decaying in Canada, it is decaying as a whole, and the question is, what does this have to do with demographics?
So much decay! Look at that! We're just decaying it up. It's nothing but worm food now. Decay is the word for something getting stronger, right? Did you think we forgot about the beginning of the video?
So if you like your free speech, the only group that has a majority is white males. And thus if you're against free speech, you're going to rail against white males, which explains a lot of the cultural and ethnic battles going on at the moment.
But supposedly we had free speech during a period when there was a lot less support for it, even among white men? You're gonna have to explain to me again how it's decaying. Part of the problem here is that these figures are the percentage of people that they're describing as, quote, free speech absolutists, which just means that they answered yes, they would allow all 5 of those groups of people to speak. But as far as I know, nowhere in the US do we actually teach free speech theory in high school anymore, if we ever did. Despite that, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation's 2014 survey found that high school students were more supportive of free speech than adults. This is why it's so murky. Most of these people haven't ever learned about free speech. The GSS are just getting on the phone to random Baptists in rural Alabama. Hey, Bubba Joe, we got some commies and queers and godless atheists giving speeches at your local town hall. Can I get an amen? When you do that, you get a lot of people who don't agree on every category. That doesn't mean they hate free speech. Most of them just haven't learned about the philosophy and practice of free speech as a right. And if you explained it to them, most of them would likely agree with you. That's why support for free speech has increased across the board among every demographic since the survey started 46 years ago.
What about religion?
See, that's what I'm talking about. Atheists, the bastion of free speech and rationality, aren't even more than a 60-40 split in this survey. You're reading too much into your free speech absolutist idea.
What about generations? Among boomers and Generation X, that data rises to 49%. It's a significant improvement, which I assume would have a lot to do with breaking down barriers in the 1960s.
Yeah, I'm Gen X, and I'm pretty sure my feelings on free speech don't have much to do with my parents protesting the Vietnam War before I was born.
Among millennials, 44% are free speech absolutists. And again, we can see on college campuses and other places that the intolerance of free speech is growing. This would be one of the reasons, or at least one of the indicators, as to the cause.
Millennials! God damn it, is there nothing safe? Record stores and the fashion industry and fast food and now free speech? I don't know if you've noticed this, but humans do this thing. What's it called? Aging. That's it. This curve of people's support for free speech could be just as easily explained by people's age as it is by their generation. Maybe people in the silent generation were stuck in their ways, but millennials' support for free speech will probably improve as they get older. I'm 43 now, and today I'm your free speech absolutist. But if you called me up at 20 and said, hey, we got this guy who wants to declare permanent martial law on the whole United States, how'd you like to see his speech in your town hall? I'd have told you to go fuck yourself.
Now, if we look at free speech absolutism by race and nativity, we get the following very illustrative data. And this is chilling.
This is chilling. This is chilling. Chilling. Just fucking scary that the children of immigrant parents are so much more supportive of free speech.
You know this data disproves you, right? Because what this means is that as people are exposed to the culture of free speech, like second-generation immigrants who grow up in it, they learn more about it and become more supportive of it. So maybe less build that wall and more distribute more pamphlets.
Free speech absolutism by intelligence. If you have average intelligence, which is declining as a whole in the West, so look at this descending staircase to hell, to hell, to hell.
To hell! It's a staircase to hell! There's a part of me that scored in the 95th percentile on the last IQ test I was given and thinks, hey, I'm cool. The other part of me scored in the 95th percentile on the last IQ test I got and knows you're full of shit. First, IQ isn't dropping in the West. It's rising. It only takes a moment on Google to find that out. Is that why you talk like you think we're all stupid? You spent a quarter of your video anally reading every number off the screen as though we couldn't see them. Also, falling IQ would contradict your thesis. Remember the beginning of this video again, where everyone is gradually becoming more supportive of free speech across the board? If, as you imply, supportive free speech is caused by IQ, and our brains are all rapidly boiling away, making us stupider all the time, then how does that graph show supportive free speech increasing? Some other factor that correlates to free speech must have increased, right? So, outside of IQ, what other factors were correlated? We became more white. No, that's not it. I know! We became more male! Yep, we're so male now that our toxic masculinity more than makes up for our growing stupidity.
Me, Tarzan, like big guns, big boobs, and free speech. Even when Tarzan not like speaker.
Your thesis doesn't match your data. And even if it did, you know that correlation isn't cause. And you're not the only one who can draw bad ad hoc conclusions. You like IQ, and people who study it say that conservatives tend to have lower IQs than liberals. In fact, they call it conservative syndrome. So, by your logic, if IQ causes support for free speech, then liberals should be the ones most in support of it. It's a good thing for you, IQ testing is mostly bullshit. So sure, IQ test scores correlate with support for free speech. Other studies have shown that poverty degrades IQ. Take an adult with an average or higher IQ, take away their money, they have to live in poverty or on the street, and their IQ drops because of the stress. So, middle to upper class kids who have higher IQ scores also have parents with loads of leisure time to explain free speech to them. Even as an adult, if you had a better education, got a better job, that means you've got more leisure time in which you're more likely to be exposed to more of the philosophy of free speech. And given the way blacks were kept in poverty for a long time, and redlining still continues, that's probably also a big factor in the racial disparity.
The values that allow us to continue to flourish in the West came from extraordinarily high IQ people in relatively high IQ environments, in fairly high IQ societies.
With high IQ dogs and high IQ haircuts and high IQ clubs like Mensa. Freedom for everyone and the slippery slope argument about restrictions on free speech aren't brain science or rocket surgery. You don't have to be Einstein or Stephen Hawking to get it. If the average teenager can navigate Facebook, then they can understand free speech ideals. Look at you! You seem to be struggling with the difference between correlation and cause, but you certainly understand why free speech is important.
I don't want to give the government the power to police speech because they're going to use that power against me all too quickly. If you have bad ideas, you don't want to be subject to the scrutiny of free speech, to the marketplace of ideas. You don't want to be challenged. And if you're on the left and you have bad ideas, you're going to support immigration from demographics that don't support free speech, because then you're going to be able to chisel away at free speech and shield your bad ideas from criticism.
Oh, it's a conspiracy! Liberals don't advocate more inclusive immigration policy for any of the reasons we say. Like that statistically immigrants add to the economy and commit less crime. Or that we see immigration as an American value because we're a country of immigrants. No, as liberals we believe ourselves to be stupid. We could simply keep our mouths shut to avoid being found out, but no, we're too stupid for that. So instead we've hatched an ingenious conspiracy to destroy free speech by welcoming Asians and Latinos. So when our country is overrun by these speech haters, then we won't have to defend our own ideas anymore. And it's working! Our devious plan is almost complete, and the marketplace of ideas will be utterly destroyed in 80 or 90 years, give or take. Dude, you destroyed your own theory in the first sentence. It presupposes that as liberals we think that our own ideas are bad. And rather than look for better ideas, we just stick to ones that we personally believe are bad for Shits and giggles? Is that what you're doing here? Is this fever dream an attempt to disguise the fact that your free speech immigration theory sucks? Fortunately, most conservatives don't have this anti-liberal agenda, just a few loud ones. Most conservatives just have different opinions.
Used to be that only 10% or so of people went to college. Now it's 40%, 50%. It's not like people have just become magically smarter. What has happened is colleges have lowered their standards, allowed more people into college, and thus you see a diminished respect for free speech because you have lower intelligence on average.
Or we could go back to the data from Gallup that shows that college students support free speech, if anything, more than the general public. What about colleges accepting more people? Yes, they are. There was a huge boom in college admissions right after World War II because of a fluke of our post-war economy. Until that time, college graduates were rare. But right after World War II, suddenly large swaths of the American public could afford to go to college. So they did. It wasn't their IQ that kept them out so much as their wallet. If Molyneux was disingenuous before, you ain't seen nothing yet.
And of course, look at liberals' relationship to Trump supporters. They hate them. They will attack them. They will denigrate them. They're, the media and constantly 90% negative coverage of Trump. And so they're not that much into diversity. They have their enemies who they hate.
Aha! Your claim to value diversity is a lie, because some people piss you off. Checkmate, snowflake. So given that, I'm going to say I don't think you really value free speech. Because you don't thoroughly love people calling you Trump's beta cuck anal slave. He loves the butt stuff!
They will attack them. They will denigrate them. They're, the media and constantly 90% negative coverage of Trump. And yet if anyone else says I'm a little bit uneasy about changing demographics, affecting the values that my ancestors fought and bled and died to hand to me, you're a bigot. Well...
Welcome to the way asylum seekers must feel. Minus the physical danger and the abuse from ICE. Every day, Fox News insists that they're all dangerous drug cartel agents and not, as is the case, families fleeing violence.
If you love free speech, if you wish to defend and protect free speech, then it's your native-born white males who are your demographic. Native-born white males in America are the most staunch defenders of free speech. No other group really comes even close.
Except, of course, native white women who are nearly identical. This little bit of misogyny is so gratuitous. Women are slightly less supportive of free speech when casually surveyed? That must mean that women are enemies of the state!
So when I talk about demographics, I'm not talking about it because I dislike the other. I'm talking about it because I like free speech. And I can read numbers.
You've eaten 1, 2, 3 psychedelic mushrooms.
And I understand data. And data, like demographics, is destiny.
I think that went pretty well. What about you, Data?
Oh, yes! I hate this! It is revolting!
More?
Please.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy my comedy, please like and subscribe below, and you can also find down there the link to my Patreon. You can help create more of this comedy and also get sneak peeks and other great rewards. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.